All right, so this is for the dumbasses. So Josh Holden, who I think is a foreigner, I think he's got an accent. I would love to hear from him. Right now on his reconstituted YouTube channel, he only has 3 subscribers, so I don't know his history or whatever. He hit me up for a thing of popcorn and a card. I sent it to him, but he seems to be giving me a lot of conflict. And not that I mind that, but know what the fuck you're talking about, okay? That's all. So, when they test amplifiers, okay, if you do your history, they haven't always been this way. And if you read an electrical engineering or even a ham radio manual or explanation and things like that, there's a whole other science, for lack of a better word, and history on how to do things with amplifiers, okay? Mostly, amplifiers have been used in radio and telecom and things like that. Audio is just sort of an afterthought, like especially car audio, right? Car audio wasn't even a thing until the 70s when Jim Rockford was like, hey, let me claim that I'm the first one to do this, even though I think Radio Shack did it forever, and Craco and Craig and a bunch of other companies. But whatever, that's fine. We'll let Jim have the credit. So one of the things that I remember learning at the same time when I was attending electronics school at Keesler in Biloxi for the Air Force was learning about resistance loads on an amplifier. Okay, so how do I explain this? So in subwoofers have it looks like this. So typically this is something that's really peaky. So mostly that's an impedance curve. So there you go. So this is frequency. We'll do that. There we go. And then this is resistance. So at any point, now remember this should be called impedance, because impedance is resistance over frequency. So impedance is in an AC circuit, alternating current, okay? And that's what music is, and that's what sine waves are. It's alternating back and forth, okay? Now, DC, direct current resistance, is just the coil alone on its own, and typically that's right around here. So let's say that equals 4 ohms, okay? The minimum impedance is going to be 4 ohms. You understand that? So it's logical, right, or even a time saver to test an amplifier at a resistive 4 ohm load to see what it can do, because that's the lowest it's going to go, right? And I'm just using this for an example. If the amp is designed to do 0.5 ohm, 1 ohm, whatever, it doesn't matter. Let's just say let's go old school and do a punch 45. We'll even do the HD version. HD, there we go. Because that's what I grew up with. This is in the 90s, right? 1990, 91, 92. That's when I was really started getting into car audio, started learning about all this stuff. I talked to a lot of people at Rockford. My friend in high school, David Fenema, I didn't even know he was a junior. And at Rockford, he was known as Junior because Dave Fenema Sr. was the guy that programmed the SMD robot. So this machine that just boop, 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 bang, 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 bang. And that's the standard now for assembly and all that stuff overseas. But anyways, so I learned a lot of the same dumb things about like box stuffing and that these are just rumors. Even that Rockford and Fosgate were like Harley and Davidson and all this other stuff. And it's all just folklore. It's all just hype and marketing. And, you know, if you're at a show and you represent, say, Rockford Fosgate, and you hear a rumor that isn't wrong, well, it is wrong, but it's complimentary, because you're making money, because this is about money, you're not going to say anything, right? So that you just let them believe that. So that's what's behind a lot of the information that you're getting is from the car audio industry. They're not there to teach you electronics. They're not. They're there to sell stuff. So if something is slanted in their direction, they're going to take advantage of it. Okay? That's why I do these videos. That's why I have this channel. That's why I started Robot, because I was so confused when I go in and talk to a professional, you know, at the fucking car audio shop, and he's a dumbass. And then especially after I got out of the Air Force, I was that young fucking, you know, undergrad type of person where I was like, I know stuff and this guy doesn't know stuff. And I was out there picking apart things. And I realized though that a lot of it is marketing. Some of it is not even intentional. They just don't know any better. So I stopped doing that. Now who I don't have any tolerance for is people that don't know what the fuck they're talking about, but tell me that I'm wrong. And I'm like, okay, I don't have a problem with people pushing back. I absolutely not. If I'm missing something, tell me something. And there was something on the video. Oh, that was the difference between white noise and pink noise. I didn't know there was a difference. I didn't learn that. And somebody had pointed it out to me, and I was like, thank you for pointing that out. I don't like to sound like a dumbass. Okay. So when somebody comes at me and tells me I got it wrong, point it out and explain it so that I'm not a dumbass anymore. Okay. So, but if I call you a dumbass, it's not personal. It's just you're the one that decided to speak up and say something dumb, and I pointed it out. That's it. So again, this is Josh Holden, whatever. You can look at his thing. If he wants to make a video critiquing me, I don't give a shit. Okay. What I know is this, and this is what I learned, and this is what I learned in electronics school. Now, again, a lot of the stuff that I learned, I had to either disprove or learn later what's really happening when you run your little woofer. Okay. Again, there's a lot more to it than you understand. And the information that car audio companies are just giving you enough information to make you dangerous for the most part. So what gets really dangerous is when people start putting thousands of watts, kilojoules, things like that, and doing burps and all that kind of stuff. And it goes up in smoke and goes up in flames, things like that. Cars and trucks do full meltdowns. It's not pretty. And sometimes that's just, again, that's, you know, well, that's what happens when you push the envelope. Maybe you shouldn't be pushing the envelope. Maybe, okay, maybe you should do things right. Maybe you should take some time and know what the fuck you're doing instead of dropping your, I'm calculating for impedance rise for fucking this. Even though this, let's say this is, actually, you know, we'll go to the FS. FS is 30 Hertz. So this is 30 Hertz right here. The FS is 30 Hertz. So this is like what? Probably, let's say 60. And then this is 120. And then it goes up from there. 240, 480. And that's what it looks like. And how steep this is just whatever. It just depends. Now, the frequency response, typically for a woofer like this, looks like this. It's actually really pretty flat. So you go, well, and these guys, they just don't know any better. They go, well, I'm losing power at the impedance curve, at the impedance rise, here and here. And I go, well, if you look at the frequency response, it doesn't show any change. That's because the woofer, or in this case the woofer, it's all drivers. But in this case, the woofer is super efficient here, and it's super efficient here. Let me get rid of that cap. That's why it does this. It's super efficient at those times. This is the least efficient, right? And it usually draws the most current. This is the worst part of the impedance curve. Worst meaning closest to zero, closest to a short. Okay? And that's why you use this as your reference. You don't worry about all this, and don't worry about this. You don't need to calculate that. You want to calculate based on the DCR. Really? Because, you know, like even DCR is lower than the impedance, the lowest impedance. Because again, impedance is resistance over frequency. Does that make sense? Okay? Now, can you load up your amplifier on an impedance that is lower than recommended? Yes, absolutely. Now, what happens is you make the amplifier way more sensitive to any input that you give it at that time. So, and it's basically going to clip out early. It's going to max out really quick because, again, it's super sensitive now, more than what was designed and more than what was spec'd by the engineer that designed the circuit in the first place. Whether it be the output circuit, whether it be the inductor if you're using a Class D, all kinds of things. And you, dumbass you, who likes to start fires, doesn't give a shit about that because you heard on the internet that you should run it at half an ohm or a third of an ohm or whatever it is, because you're an idiot, okay? So that's impedance curve. Let me erase this real quick, and then I'll go on to other subjects. All right, so one cool thing that came from the array of engineers that spent time at Rockford. Now remember, all these engineers are local here in Tempe, Phoenix area, metropolitan Phoenix area. And they went, especially at the time in the late 80s, early 90s, they went from company to company, okay? And all these companies were competing for the same dollars at the time. We're talking about PPI, later Orion, and Rockford. Bernie Bolin was one of those people. He was at Rockford. He told me the story about how they came up with the name, and that makes way more sense than anything that I heard. I'm like, oh, yeah, that sounds like fucking typical car audio douchebags. Yep, you got it. So, but I want to talk about Rockford's Power Cube. Now, this is this is a name, okay, and they probably trademarked this, even though it's a standard measurement that's used in electronics and AC circuits and things like that. So a couple things that came from Rockford. One was they used to tout that they had a huge array of equipment, which was LCR networks. This is an inductor. This is a cap. This is a resistor. So they would have LCR circuits, heavy duty ones, all series parallel to get the loads that you want to replicate subwoofers. Okay, the curve, the impedance curve that I just went over, okay? Now, why would you use LCRs? Why wouldn't you just use subwoofers? Well, because subwoofers require a box, and then it requires a lot of room, and the original Rockford demo area was not very large. So this works pretty much the same. Now, Rockford used to tout about this, that this is how they tested their amps. And then the other thing that they tested was... what did they call it? It was the Power Cube. And so they would test also in 90, this is 180, and then this was I think it's 270 degrees. So they would test the signal, and like 0 degrees would be like, say, 54 watts. And then 90 degrees off phase would be like 52. And then 180 would be 53. And then over here, 270, it would be 50. And so then what they do is they average this. And then that gives you the power rating. Now, whether this is LCR or straight resistive, that's where it gets interesting, okay? So like a loudspeaker has a dynamic impedance, right? Like that, looks like that. Okay, so it's not the same resistance, and I hate to use the word resistance. It's got a different impedance per frequency. So, but this is typically what it looks like. This is to mock, it's to dummy up, what's the word? To abbreviate a loudspeaker. That's what an LCR network is. And is it a good test? Yeah, it's better than a resistive test, a pure resistive test, because you can also test phase. And then the other one was it? Well, it's also a lot more compact than testing actual loudspeakers. So, does that make sense? Okay. Now, if you get into RMS, right? This is root. Some people say meets, but it's not. It's means squared. And basically what this is, it ends up, it's a very elaborate average. That's summing it up. I recommend you read how to calculate RMS, okay, and then especially over frequency and things like that, so you can understand what's really happening with the amplifier. Now, here's the other thing that happens in the industry. RMS ratings, okay, especially resistive RMS ratings, are what an amplifier, especially a car amplifier, excels in, right? It shows what the amplifier can really do if it's given a chance, right? The problem is loudspeakers are not resistive. And so as you saw, I think, what was it? The DIY audio guy did it, which was, I thought was fantastic. And you can see how much of a boner killer it is. Where like even the recoil amp RED 600.1 is 0.1 is the one that he tested. And a resistive rating, it was like, 700 at 1 ohm. Okay. And then when he did a dynamic rating, which would be like he actually tested a loudspeaker at 1 ohm or at an impedance of 1 ohm, right? And again, that's why they usually preface that with nominal. Nominal means it exists, but it doesn't really exist. Like it's real, but it's not real. So I think I'm going to look it up. Nominal impedance on that was like, it was like shit. It was like 200 watts or something like that. It was a big difference than 700. Okay. So there's a reason why audio companies like this number, right? And they like the resistive numbers, and they don't like to talk about real math and things like that because they're in the business of selling you amplifiers, expensive amplifiers. These amplifiers are some of the most expensive amplifiers on the planet. And you go, Patrick, these really aren't that expensive. You should see what they cost to make. You should see what it's really like for a really high-powered amplifier. Okay? This is all garbage and bullshit relative to what else exists in another realm, in another industry. This is all toys. This is play stuff. That's one of the reasons why I talk about the car audio industry the way that I do. Because anybody worth a shit, anybody worth a damn, and I'm talking about engineers, I'm not talking about owners or VP of sales or anybody like that. I'm talking about engineers. Engineers know better, right? But they're not in a position to say anything. You understand? So that's not their job to correct you. It's not their job to teach you the real way that this math is distorted, right? And it's distorted in a way that favors sales, okay? And that's one of the reasons why a lot of companies, including Recoil, right? If you go on the website, is this a 600 watt amplifier? No, it's a conservatively rated 700 watt amplifier. But they claim it does, I think whatever it is, it's like 1200 or 1230 or something like that. And that is a max rating. And a max rating is like that. And what they do is they just go like, let's see. Here's your center thing. And then like this side is, let's see, it's 700 watts. So this is 350. This is 350. And they're measuring from here to here. Okay. That's the RMS value. That's the average. Again, saying the word average when you really mean RMS is basically the same. I recommend if you want to learn more, read books. Okay. You can read it online too. I'm sure they have EE courses in those, the links that I post in the description from Harvard and places like that. And you can learn fancy pants style. Okay. Read books, learn this stuff, understand what they're really talking about. And then you'll see how much bullshit the audio industry is heaping on you. Okay. Just to get your dollars. That's how hungry and aggressive they are. And willing to just tell you whatever the fuck you want to hear so that you'll spend that money. Like, I forget which website it was. It was like, somebody asked me the other day if I take Klarna, and I was like, who the fuck is Klarna? And there's all these companies, a firm and all these other companies, and it's basically predatory lending, and it's online, and they approve virtually everybody. And one of the great things about subscribing to this is a firm or whatever. I used it for Audio Legion. Audio Legion offers, I think, a firm. And I financed a couple of things to it just to try it out or whatever. I didn't care for it. I thought it was kind of annoying. But one of the great things that they do is they guarantee the seller, right? Like in this case, it would be me. They guarantee payment. And then I can even jack up the rates too, and I can make even more money on that. So if you ever go to a website, I don't know, maybe like Down for Sound or something like that, they take them all. They take them all because they don't give a shit about you and they want to take your money. And even though predatory lending is, again, it's predatory, I don't recommend it unless you're very smart and you know what the fuck you're doing. Otherwise, they're going to take advantage of you, okay? Because most of you guys are dumb and you don't even know you're dumb, okay? I'm doing my best to educate you, but if you don't want to learn, then you're not going to learn, okay? So I decided not to do this because, number one, I think it's predatory. And I think credit cards are predatory enough, even at 20 and even 30% on some of these credit cards. And if you don't have your shit together enough to even get a fucking high limit, not even a high limit, even a fucking Credit One or whatever it is, $500 credit card, you're an idiot. And you should not be given Klarna or Affirm or anything like that. Don't fucking do that. Or you're scamming. That's the worst thing. And I don't want anything to do with you. Okay, does that make sense? So anyways, well, back to this. The reason why these companies rate them at max, all this is it's peak to peak. So like, I guess for a very fine moment, you could double this. So this would be 700. And then, oh, what did I say? This is 350. 700, that's a max. And then you can go max, which is 1400 watts. So now this does 1400 watts. Max. I don't like to use the max rating because I know it's not real. I like to use the RMS rating. I like to use conservative ratings, right? And that's what Big D Wiz talks about. He's like, if you're going to sell me a 600 watt amp for $3,000 because it's made by Italians, okay? If you're going to sell me a 600 watt amp, it better do 700 to 800 watts. I think that's misleading as well. What they should really test and say, they should actually call it a name. They shouldn't even say it a number. If you want to ask me, again, you call it like the fucking Jiznado, right? This is the best at the top of the one or whatever. This is the most powerful one. But then you get into these weird manipulations on math and how they measure. Again, sales guys, they go, we got to hit these numbers. We got to hit these numbers. Why? Because all your competitors are doing the same fucking thing. And the user, right? The guy buying this stuff is dumb as hell if he thinks this is even a fucking priority in his life. Fucking diapers, getting a home, paying for your car, not your dumb shoes, not your dumb phone, but all these things that are shiny and pretty and make you boom. That's what these guys find as a priority, and they're taking advantage of you. And if you allow them to, that's your fault. It's not mine. I'm doing my best to get the word out that you guys are dumb and that you maybe should second look, right? Like when somebody says, what is it? So funny how young people, I don't even say kids, young people are so sensitive about criticism. Like if you tell them, hey, your shoes are untied, mind your own fucking business. Go for it. And then they step on their shoelace and they fall, they break their fucking tooth. And then you call them B-Rad for the rest of their life, right? Because their name is Brad, but you're like, oh, you're trying to be cool, so you're B-Rad now. That's what happens. So back to power. All right, so there's a 1400 watt max rating going on here, even though the amp only does 700 watts, right? Or even 600 watts. And then what companies like in the Pyramid group, which is Pile, used to be Legacy. I don't know if they even make Legacy anymore, even though I really like their products. Pyramid, of course. And then they also picked up Lanzar, where Gary Cove got to retire and then he started Cove Audio. But typically they've been working on the Pile brand lately, not really these other ones. Pile and Lanzar have been their two big ones. So, but anyways, they rate double max, right? And so this now becomes 2800. Oh, Boss Group does this too. So, and that's why you'll look at an amplifier that has, like, say, two 30 amp fuses, and they'll say it has a 2800 watt rating. In fact, sometimes they don't even give a shit. They're like, hey, China, what looks cool? And they're like, things that say 4,000 on them have been selling. And so they go, okay. And that sometimes is the choice on market research. That's it. That's what happens. And then they make a $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 bet. And guess what? It pays off because people are dumb and they don't know any better. Okay, now you go, well, people are dumb that buy Boss. Not necessarily. I like Boss. I buy Boss, right? Because this 2800 watt amp, how much does it cost? On Amazon, what? It's like, let's say 68 bucks, right? Hey, $68. How much is the Recoil? This one is like 100. See, pretty close. Same power, but if it says Boss on it, it's $68. Recoil says $100, and then if it's Rockford, let's say, God damn, it's probably $400. And then if it says JL, oh my God, we're talking about $600. See? And you're getting this, you got to understand that the same amount of work is being done, right? That's one of the reasons why Tilo over at TC Sounds, who is an engineer by trade, that's why he called the 3 HP motor 3 HP. Because really power, when applied to a motor, right, like in this case it's a subwoofer, it's a linear oscillating motor, you measure in horsepower, right? And he's like, I would love to see the conversion to it. Really, don't you remember? Like, I remember physics class. Okay, I had to make up for a math credit because kept getting in arguments with fucking Algebra 2 teachers, and they're like, oh, you got to make up for this math class. You end up, and I didn't like the first math teacher or the physics teacher. I found Mr. Snow, who in 1992 in Westwood High School in Mesa, Arizona, won Teacher of the Year. And he got honors, and they came in, fucking Channel 8, which is the PBS station here. They filmed us. They even had my dumb ass on there with spiky hair, raising my hand, getting all excited. I was the most fucking punk rock dude in the physics class. The only regret that I have is that I took the class pass fail, because according to the system, I was bad at math. So I took a pass fail. Turns out it's not that I'm bad at math. I'm just bad with math teachers and the way that they teach. I knew all kinds of stuff inherently, intuitively. It was fucking great. It was one of my most favorite classes. I never missed one, even though I was fucking that Jehovah's Witness girl during lunch or whatever. Yeah, I can't remember if I had it. No, I had physics before lunch, and then I'd fuck her at lunch. So, but I never missed a class because I loved going to his class. And he used to say physics is fun. And of course, you spell physics with a PH, and so you spell fun with a PH. It's a little nerd joke. Fucking, I had all the nerd pussy dripping wet for me, okay? You should see my fucking yearbook, all right? All kinds of phone numbers. Come over and fuck my pussy, Patrick. I'm like, nope, you're a nerd bitch. Later. So, I have an inkling for this. I'm good at this. I know what the fuck I'm doing, and I know when people are bullshitting me, and that's what I saw through the whole industry. And then when I took the electronics course, it solved a lot of questions that I had. And so I actually recommend, if they get their way, look to taking all kinds of courses online just to learn. And again, you don't really need to take a course. Even college is a fucking bullshit thing. Just read the book. Read and understand the book. And that's why I keep recommending Loudspeaker Cookbook. And they should offer some college, some no-name college like Wayland Baptist University that I attended in fucking Hawaii, because I didn't want to go through 4 semesters of history. So you can take 2 courses of religion, which I aced in. It was fucking very intelligent. It was great, really good coursework, and the teachers were fantastic. But some college should offer a course in loudspeaker development, and that should be the textbook. So, because again, what's really great about the cookbook is it combines a lot of elements from different disciplines, right? There's a draw from electrical engineering, right? That's a whole, you can get an EE, that's a fucking bachelor's degree. That's 4 years of fucking math and all kinds of weird shit. And it still doesn't even talk about loudspeakers. Okay, it talks about radio, it talks about resistance, it talks about a bunch of other stuff. And then if you get into radio, then you're talking about propagation, you're talking about impedance, you're talking about all kinds of things that you're not calculating, that you're not even seeing in this arena. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff. And then there's the whole physics side. And then there's a subdivision of physics, which is acoustics. That's a whole other property thing, dealing with a very tiny spectrum of the electromagnetic spectrum, right? The very first, it's not even an octave. When you go from 20 to 20, that it goes up into fucking light. It goes into microwaves. It goes into all kinds of frequencies, the electromagnetic spectrum. This is the bottom. This is the fucking gutter of the electromagnetic spectrum. But people relate to it, and they love it. They love music. They love feeling the music. They love feeling part of that. I used to love going to concerts. I don't like people so much anymore, but I would wear hearing protection, or at least, plugs in my ears. And I loved feeling the music and jumping around with everybody. That was fucking fantastic. And that's what car audio brought to me. And that's one of the things that I learned about myself, is that I actually use both halves of my brain equally. If I build something and it's not practical, I don't want anything to do with it. It's very difficult for me to accept art at art's sake. And I used to entertain a lot of that stuff, and I would love to get back into it. But again, you only have so much time in life. You got to focus on one or two things, and that's all you get to do. And that's why I focus on finance for you guys. That's why I tell you to do sales, because that's the only way to escape the 9-to-5. Otherwise, you're stuck in a 9-to-5 job, hoping to get a retirement, only to be fucked in the butthole by your union, by your company, to steal away, or worse, the stock market, by the federal government printing too much money, stealing your money that way. You got to take your life into your own hands. And one of the ways that you can do it is learn about this stuff, and also be open to ideas about other companies producing the same machine, right? So that always got me was, there's Ford people and there's Chevy people, and then there's the weirdo Dodge people. And then there's smart people, which is Toyota people. Ha ha ha. So, but when you look at Ford versus Chevy, and back in the 50s and 60s and then in through the 70s, they would always compete with one another. But they were still both making the same turd, and they're both still making that same turd from the same vendors in Michigan and the surrounding area. And so what is the difference between a 6-cylinder, right? That I think Chevy makes a short block, which is like 350 cubic inches. And it's not even exactly 350 cubic inches. That gets into a whole thing too. Are you going to round up or round down? Are you going to be conservative or not? So if the actual displacement is like 354, right? Do you call it 354 or do you call it 350? They did the same thing. This is where they got all this shit. And then Ford would make a 355, and so then they would just add that 5, and people who didn't know the difference would go, wow, that's 5 more cubic inches. It's got to be better. It's a Ford. They do the same dumb thing. And then on top of that, what's the difference between 350 cubic inches of displacement on a V6 and 355 cubic inches on a V8? Which one's better? It depends on how much mass there is. It depends on the load. It depends on torque. Both are going to perform in this weird power curve, where at 20 mph versus 80 mph, that's going to be your most powerful power band, right? The rest of this is not worth doing because it's too slow. The engine is not efficient at this, at least a gasoline, right? That's why hybrids are kind of cool, because they get efficient down here. Up here, that's wind resistance, all kinds of other bullshit. It makes it not affordable, not a good idea to drive that fast. Also, you're an idiot and you're drinking, so don't drive fast. But again, same sorts of things. Which one's better? They're both the same. Both the displacement are the same, and virtually, if the mass is the same on both vehicles, they're going to perform the same. So the same amount of work is being done. Now, what's more expensive? Right there. Well, we got to charge more. It's a V8. Which one is more reliable? Well, they're both pieces of shit. Okay, they're both made in Detroit, aged in the Detroit winter. We used to watch these old fucking videos in shop class in metal shop, or not metal shop. Well, it was the same guy. He was out of there in ag building. He did car. I forgot his name. We used to make fun of him because he would wear the same color shirt all week, and then he would wear the same pair of pants like Monday through Wednesday, and then he would change his pants Thursday, Friday, and then he would come in on Saturdays to fucking fuck around. And if you wanted to show up, you could do some freestyle stuff on the cars or whatever. We used to make fun of him. But then, like, if we fell asleep in his class, he would drop a spring, a big, large shock spring. I forget what it's called. This is just a coil. You drop that on the fucking ground behind somebody. Oh my God, you think you're on fire. Piss your pants, all kind of stuff. It's fucking great. Those are the guys that would teach me stuff like this. But again, you don't hear that from Ford. You don't hear that from Chevy. You don't hear it does the same fucking thing, because they're both competing over the same dollar, and they both want to snow you. They're both in agreement. Is that collusion? It doesn't have to be. All you have to do is pay attention to the other guy and then just sort of slide in there, right? And you see this with pricing on all kinds of stuff. That's what's really exciting right now about Recoil. Is like I make these videos and I'm like wrong about the price all the time. Luckily, the guys that are buying Recoil and listen to me do their own homework and don't bitch too much. I think I've heard a couple of things, and I'm just like, whatever, just go buy it on Amazon. Buy it wherever it's cheaper. I don't give a shit. I don't make any money from this. I'm just trying to advise you to make better choices. That's all. So again, if you can get the same amplifier, which is 700 RMS at 1 ohm for $68, fucking get it, right? Look at Big D Wiz's, I'll put a link to it. The Boss Audio Armor 4000D. Fantastic amplifier. I would love to know if Mr. Demore had anything to do with it, right? Whether it was a fix, a quirk, or a full design. I would love to know if he had anything to do with it. What's funny is Tony doesn't talk about his time at the Boss Group, but Tony was an engineer, and it's on his LinkedIn page. You don't even have to believe me. He puts it on there, but he just doesn't advertise it. Why? Because many people in the car audio industry shit on Boss, and you shouldn't. Even as an investor, Boss Group does very, very well internationally. Okay, so does AudioVox. AudioVox is a giant company, and a lot of times they just get out of this silliness. There's a lot of returns. People are dumb. They hook it up wrong. There's all kinds of stuff that causes problems with that. And then, like, what was it? Somebody got into, I think it was the telecom industry. There was a big hubbub about Class T, right, which is just a Class D design. But it was, oh, that's wife. Hang on. It's just a Class D design, but it's a proprietary. They have a proprietary circuit or whatever. And TriPath was the company or the brand or whatever, and it was their version of Class D. And they would send out press releases, and I followed them because I thought it was the next thing. I was susceptible to that sort of hype. And then they got this big contract with I think it was, well, it ended up being Lucent Technologies on their T1 switch, or their big what is it called? CO, the central office. So like your town has what's called the central office, where all the telephone wires, copper, you know, when they ran originally, all come together in one central office in your town. And Lucent sold this device that could replace that, because manually, and I worked in a CO, you have to manually disconnect wires and connect wires and all that kind of stuff. And we went through that in the Air Force, and we did a lot of that stuff because there's still a lot of that stuff out there in the world. And this switch, Lucent Technology switch, would automate all this stuff. And one of the things that, was it God damn it, I forgot the name now. Class T, TriPath. One of the things that they landed was the line drivers for those circuits, right? Because sometimes you have to drive it over copper, and so you need a larger signal. And they actually made more money in that than they did in all their car audio. And that was just one contract. So Ricky, what was his name? It wasn't Ricky Lake. I forget, Ricky Farr, I think, of Diamond Audio. They were doing, this was years ago when they were over in Chandler. This is Diamond Audio, before Larry Van Sickle got a hold of it. Ricky Farr was, I think, one of the top guys, or the owner or whatever, after Bob Diamond stepped away from it. And they got an OEM contract with Gateway, and they were doing the Gateway loudspeakers. That, like, if you made $1 profit on every one, and fucking Gateway sold millions of computers, millions. So if you're making $1 per unit on that, and and it's also advertising for the Diamond Audio brand, you can see why OEM is really the way to go. Other industries are really the way to go. What you see in car audio is just, it's all bullshit. Now, a lot of these owners are just, you know, they don't want to go big, or this is easy and it's a slam dunk, and they just pick a different color and they come out with the same amplifier for years. And, you know, I don't want to say Rockford and Orion and all those guys are guilty of it, because, again, if the product is good, you keep making it, right? And that's the other thing that you guys get in arguments with me. If it's so good, it doesn't matter whether it's a split gap design, a dual coil design, or a push-pull design, or whatever the fuck it is. If it really works, it will show up, and it will still be made. And a lot of those things are not made, right? PPI is not making Art Series anymore. Why? It doesn't sound any different. It doesn't sound any different. In fact, You can't even tell the difference now between that and Class D. Ooh, did I hurt some feelings? Go out and test them for yourself. Look at them on oscopes. Test them. Look at them. So the same sort of voodoo bullshit is really big in home audio. And I invite you guys to join the Facebook group. It's called Audio Bullshit. And I'll put a link to that in the description as well. So there's so much garbage. Again, I love using lamp cord as speaker wire because it's copper by law. And you can't get any better than copper. Well, Patrick, you can use silver. If you want to buy silver wire, go for it, dumbass. You're not going to hear a difference, okay? Copper's fine. Aluminum's actually fine. Yeah, aluminum's actually fine. Aluminum wire, whether it's coated with copper, again, makes no difference because of the ampacity and the parameters that you're using it for. You're using it for a tiny spectrum of the electromagnetic spectrum, and you're only running 50 feet, if that, it's not going to make a difference. So, and it took me years of disappointment. I went through all these disappointments that you guys hear me talk about. I already went through all this bad news. And when you go out on the other side, you grow as an adult and you grow as a human, and you learn and realize. Now, this is the part where it gets, I don't want to say tricky, but there's a decision. You can decide to be part of that system, like Scott Dilbeck, what's his name, David Lieb, and those guys, and be part of the machine, and be part of the system, and be part of the misinformation, part of the man, right? The collaborative, the people that are fucking hunting you for your money, or you can be independent and do other stuff. And that's, again, I don't care if the whole industry fucking burns down. I think it should. And I would love to dominate it simply by what Larry's doing, which is you bring in a nice looking $100 amp that does 700 watts, and you fucking rule. You rule the roost. People go, oh, this is a really great product. Yes, it is. This is also a great product, but it doesn't look as pretty. And that's Boss's downfall. I would love to design amplifiers for Boss. It probably pays pretty good, right? At least 6 figures. You got to go to China every once in a while and make sure they're doing a good fucking job and all that kind of stuff. And you got to do testing, and they make you do a bunch of other monkey stuff I don't have time for. I don't really want to do. But there are jobs out there like that. So if you get good at what you're doing and you know the difference, and you can keep your fucking mouth shut about what this $68 amp costs. So if they're selling it at $68 and they're making a profit, I wonder what it really costs to make. That's the real winner. And it's doing the same amount of work as 700 watts RMS available. Now, what's it really putting out to the subwoofer? Next to nothing. 200 watts. Right? We went over that. And again, I'll put a link to DIY Audio Guy. And my shout out to him and his work. He does his best to be a professional. I do not. I don't give a shit. But shout out to him. I love the disappointment in his voice. Because he wants to be like EXO. He wants to be super excited about this dumb shit. And he really does his best. He does some good acting, right? About being excited about this new project or whatever it is. And part of the novelty of doing something different and doing something new, it is exciting, right? And then once you have a hand job at one massage place, you realize the hand jobs are all the same at all the massage places. So what are you really farming out work that you can do at home? Right? You're like, yeah, but Patrick, that's a big, strong man jacking my wiener. So what? Everybody's a little gay. It's okay. I love you guys. I got to go inside. I hope this makes sense. I would love to see somebody else pick up this ball and run with it and show all of this stuff. Now, I've made several references that you can obviously look up. I'll put as many links about, like, you can read a manual on the Internet Archive, which I'll post for Rockford Fosgate. You can go to their website from the late 90s and early 2000s, and there's all their manuals. So I used to think that I had to back them all up because they would be gone. I didn't know about the archive at the time. So the archive backs up all that stuff, and you can download it for free. Now, I don't know, they're a bunch of dicks. They won't give you the manual, and there's fucking search engine on Rockford's website sucks. You're like punch 200 and nothing comes up. It's so dumb. You know what? Now that Forrest works over at Recoil, I will talk to Forrest about that, and he will give me the tea on that bullshit and why it fucking operates like that. So, but anyways, I love you guys. I will talk to you later. Keep your dick in a vice. That's one of the best guys. I'll put a link to him on the internet. He does tool testing and a bunch of other stuff, and he's really my inspiration for these videos and my channel and a bunch of other stuff that I do. Watch him. I love you guys. Be safe. Bye.